Every day, someone kneels before a stranger and calls it faith, signs a check, gives up their children, changes countries, relinquishes their own will, and believes with tears in their eyes that they are doing good.
That person might be a man in a suit, perhaps an ordinary person, a single mother seeking healing, a young person exhausted by public and political promises that never materialize. They all have something in common. They need to believe in something that saves them from the void. In November 1978, in the rainforest of Guyana, 909 people, including over 300 children, died after drinking cyanide-laced Kool-Aid. It was not suicide, it was obedience. It was faith distorted into poison. Reverend Jim Jones did not create an army by force. He offered hope, and hope, when placed in the wrong hands, kills. But Jonestown is not an isolated case. It's just the loudest one. The uncomfortable truth is this: cults are not anomalies. They are radical versions of normal human desires. You could be 3 bad decisions away from joining one, or one bereavement, or one disappointment that makes you rethink everything. In this video, we are going to look squarely at the abyss where cults are born and understand why ordinary, intelligent, good people surrender themselves to leaders who destroy them. This is not a story about others. It is about us. No one enters a cult because they were deceived. They enter because they were available. Not spiritually available, but existentially vulnerable. It is a precise, silent moment when the internal structure begins to give way, and that structure can be brought down by a tragedy or by something much more common: the exhaustion of living without direction. That is the uncomfortable truth. Cults do not recruit the insane. They recruit the exhausted, functional, sociable, educated people, but adrift. The People's Temple, led by Jim Jones, did not start as a trap. It was a center for charity, anti-racism, and progressivism. It attracted idealists, teachers, workers, single mothers, and what united them all was not naivety. It was the exhaustion of living in a society that fails to deliver on its promises. The cult appears as a correction, not a break. It offers organization where there was only noise. It says, "We have answers. We are different. You matter here." And the pain of not mattering? That, indeed, is unbearable. In 1977, hundreds followed Jim Jones into the Guyanese jungle, not out of faith, but because they had already lost everything that held them in the previous world. Utopia did not seem like delirium. It seemed like relief. That is the secret. Cults do not appear as abysses. They appear as bridges. And only after the individual crosses, only after they become isolated, after they cut ties, after they give up everything, is it when they realize that the other side has no way back. No one enters through submission. They enter because they finally found a place where suffering has a logic. And logic, even if false, is comforting. Power is not imposed by force. It is offered as freedom. That is the trap. The charismatic leader does not dominate through coercion, but through seduction. He does not take anyone's freedom away. He leads people to donate it. This is where the cult stops being a group and becomes a mechanism. The philosopher Etienne de la Boétie, in his discourse on voluntary servitude, published in 1576, already denounced this phenomenon. It is incredible how easily the people, as soon as they cease to be dominated, free themselves, as if they only had to shake off the yoke. According to La Boétie, domination does not survive without the consent of the dominated, and the tragedy is that this consent is often given enthusiastically. The leader's promise is simple: relief from doubt, ambiguity, and responsibility. It is not explicit violence. It is artificial clarity. A world without questions where someone already has all the answers. Charisma is the channel. Control is the destination. Sociologist Max Weber defined charisma as the extraordinary quality of a leader who is treated as if they possess supernatural powers or exceptional qualities. But Weber went further. He noted that charisma only works because it finds a psychological terrain ready to receive it. People who want to believe, surrender, let themselves be guided. No cult exists without this drama. The leader embodies the absolute. The follower surrenders the fragment of themselves. And this does not happen out of ignorance. It happens out of exhaustion. Full freedom, the kind that demands constant reflection, the daily construction of meaning, confrontation with chance, is unsustainable for many. As Erich Fromm wrote in Escape from Freedom, liberty, though desired, can become an unbearable burden. Fromm observes that, faced with the weight of deciding for themselves, many prefer to merge into an authority that exempts them from thinking, choosing, and answering. This is the soil where cults flourish. They promise autonomy, but they demand surrender. And that surrender does not look like surrender at first. It looks like rest. The consequence is devastating. The follower believes they have chosen, but everything was already calculated. Every step, every gesture of the leader, every doctrine, every phrase said with a calm voice or burning eyes serves the same purpose: to implant a logic that excludes the contradictory. From then on, there is no more debate. The catechism. Doubt becomes betrayal, criticism becomes offense, and the world outside the cult begins to be seen as corrupted, dirty, ignorant. It is the birth of a new reality. The cult, then, does not need to physically imprison anyone. It imprisons thought. And when thought is kidnapped, all subsequent decisions are just simulations of choice. That is the final paradox. The cult presents itself as liberation and establishes itself as a prison. The person who enters thinks they are taking control of their own life, but they are only handing the key to their own consciousness to another. There is no logical way out of that structure. Only those on the outside can see it clearly. Only those who still think with autonomy realize that absolute control begins with a promise of salvation. We want to be free, but we are terrified of what freedom demands. This is the contradiction that defines much of human suffering. We crave autonomy, but we beg for direction. And that desire for direction is precisely where indoctrination is installed, not as imposition, but as an irresistible consolation. The philosopher Blaise Pascal wrote in his Pensées, "Nothing is more unbearable to man than to be in full repose, without passion, without business, without distraction, without occupation." He then feels his nothingness, his abandonment, his inadequacy, his dependence, his helplessness, his emptiness. That is the open door. The human being, faced with the silence of existence, easily gives in to the first voice that claims to know the way. The cult does not indoctrinate with shouts. It indoctrinates with presence. It binds. It does not invade. It gradually replaces critical thinking with a repeated thought. And when the subject realizes it, they no longer think. They reproduce. They no longer choose. They react according to the script. They no longer distrust. They simply believe. The most perverse thing is that this process is not perceived as violence. It is perceived as a rebirth. The individual feels that they are finally at peace, when in reality, they are only anesthetized. Psychology calls this cognitive dissonance reduction. It is when the mind, to avoid the discomfort of profound doubt, reconstructs reality around the belief so as not to have to abandon it. But this theory is only useful if we understand that this reconstruction is not an error. It is a defense, a way to stay alive amidst the absurd. Albert Camus, in The Myth of Sisyphus, proposes that the human being lives in a world without objective meaning, and that this realization leads to what he calls the absurd. The cult offers a functional lie. It answers the absurd with doctrine. It answers chaos with rules. It answers anguish with belonging, and that, for a time, seems like healing. In everyday life, we see this dynamic in minor versions. People who follow self-help gurus, business people who turn corporate leaders into oracles, teenagers who adhere to totalizing ideologies because they are lost between identity and rejection. The mechanism is the same. Belong before thinking, obey before questioning, feel saved, even if it is by a prison. The cult only takes this human impulse to the extreme. Therefore, The most effective methods of indoctrination are almost invisible. They do not look like brainwashing. They look like affection. First come the rituals, then the slogans, then the new enemies. Until the external world begins to seem contaminated and the internal one pure. At that point, leaving already means losing the only logic that keeps the world upright. Therefore, indoctrination does not break reason. It reprograms what seems reasonable. And when everyone around you agrees with you, when the only faces around you confirm your beliefs, when dissenting means losing all ties, thinking differently becomes more painful than remaining deceived. The prison no longer has bars. It has echoes. It is easy to leave a cult. The difficult part is surviving afterwards, because leaving does not just mean abandoning a group. It means destroying the entire psychic foundation. What looks like liberation to the outsider looks like total collapse to the insider. You not only lose faith, you lose friends, codes, language, the meaning of life. Whatever is done for love is always beyond good and evil, and it is out of love for the cause, the group, the leader that many remain even after doubt sets in, because admitting the mistake requires facing reality with a rawness that few can bear. It is easier to remain within the delusion than to start over in helplessness. Here, thinking is not enough. Rationally, the lie has already been perceived, but emotionally, the lie remains a refuge. Philosophy recognizes this abyss. Simone Weil wrote, "It is necessary to tear the soul away from all false gods, even when they sustain us." But she also warned that the break with the false can leave the human being on the brink of the unbearable. This is the knot. Indoctrination destroys the original ego and reconstructs it based on the cult's internal logic. Leaving is killing that new ego and dealing with the grief of the self. That is why many do not leave. Not because they are foolish, fanatical, or manipulable, but because leaving requires an emotional deconstruction that does not come with a manual. There are no guarantees, no community outside, only silence, shame, and a question no one wants to answer. How could I have believed it? That is the trauma. In many cases, the cult has already taken everything. House, money, reputation, time. Go back where? Go back to whom? Psychoanalysis understands this well. Lacan asserted that the real is the impossible, and leaving a cult is precisely facing that naked, unfiltered reality. The void that existed before the cult is still there, now amplified by disillusionment. Even those who manage to leave drag scars. Trust in others evaporates. Trust in themselves shatters. And no matter how much they find freedom, the fear of being deceived again never leaves. That is why departure rarely happens through simple enlightenment. It usually comes through the collapse of the structure. When the leader falls, when there are scandals, when the pain outweighs the belief, or when someone from outside refuses to surrender and patiently offers another possible narrative. No rush, no imposition, just presence. But even in these cases, the escape from the cult is not a race toward the light. It is a slow, messy, contradictory, and profoundly lonely process. That is the true prison. It is not made of walls, but of accumulated losses that become unbearable to face all at once. And that is why the door is always closed, not with a padlock, but with the fear of starting from scratch. Every cult begins inside us. It does not need a guru, a temple, or a doctrine. The desire is enough. Desire for something to explain us, organize us, and redeem us. The idea that cults are distant, fringe, extreme phenomena is comforting and false. Cults are not system failures. They are radical expressions of legitimate human needs. Whoever watched this video expecting only to understand why people fall for this has not understood anything yet. The right question is not why they enter, but what is in them that is also in me. That is the mirror almost no one wants to look into. Throughout the video, we heard that entering a cult is not madness, it is emotional logic. It begins at an exact moment, the collapse of identity. The individual loses their way or is in doubt, and someone appears with promises. Promises of healing, clarity, family, destiny, wealth. And that is seductive, because thinking for oneself is exhausting. Feeling alone is unbearable. Choosing every day without knowing if it is right is a type of anguish that never rests. Cults sell rest. The charismatic leader is only the face of the structure. He does not need to be intelligent. He only needs to fill the void with a firm voice and determined eyes. And when the structure closes, when the new reality is established, control no longer needs to be imposed. It is maintained by the followers themselves. They police, correct, denounce, and defend, with more fervor than the leader himself would demand. After that, leaving becomes almost impossible. Not because of physical imprisonment, but because everything at stake has already been surrendered. Name, face, past, relationships, autonomy. Leaving does not just mean changing your mind. It means destroying the world where one lived as a saved person, and rebuilding a new self from scratch in a world that has already been rejected, discredited, demonized is a brutal effort. The lesson is not only about those who enter or who cannot leave. The lesson is about the mental structure that allows this to happen. And that structure is not limited to cults. It appears elsewhere. Every time a boss becomes an oracle. Every time a political party transforms into a church. Every time an ideology demands absolute purity. Every time a social movement prohibits dissent. Every time an influencer demands loyalty and offers belonging in exchange for obedience, the logic is the same. Only the clothing changes. If the traditional cult uses religion, modern cults use purpose, lifestyle, identity. The form changes. Human fragility continues. And this is where what this says about all of us comes in. We are much more manipulable than we like to admit, because we are beings in search of meaning, and meaning does not come ready-made. It is built day by day, between boredom and frustration, between noise and doubt. And whoever does not tolerate this slow, arduous, and uncertain process will look for shortcuts. And shortcuts have owners, they have a price, they have consequences. The greatest protection against a cult is not intelligence. It is lucidity. It is the capacity to endure the discomfort of not knowing, to continue living even without guarantees, to reject perfect leaders, closed answers, and dogmas packaged for consumption. As Hannah Arendt, who closely studied the mechanisms of totalitarian obedience, wrote, "The ideal of totalitarian government is not to achieve conviction, but to destroy the capacity for forming any conviction. The cult, deep down, does not want you to be faithful. It wants you to be incapable of being free. And that is the truth no one wants to hear. You might already be inside, not in a formal cult, but in a closed narrative, of a leader you blindly defend, of an ideology you never questioned, of a group that demands loyalty above truth. The only real way out is to regain the ability to think without asking for permission. To think until it hurts. To think until it liberates. To think even if it leaves us alone. That is the only way to continue being human in a world that constantly offers versions of ourselves that do not belong to us. You who have made it this far are already part of this. This channel is maintained by a rare community, lucid, brave people who do not run away from difficult questions. If you feel that you belong to this place, become a channel member. It is the most direct way to keep this project alive. And it also gives you access to exclusive content and dialogues for those who are already members. Thank you. You are the backbone of all this. And for those seeking more, I leave a serious invitation. Philosophia Pessimista. Just by watching, commenting, or sharing, you are already participating. And here, that matters. Thank you very much.